Hi guys, so Derek just took Gwen off to a swimming lesson and I just got Grace down to bed, and Wyatt and Clyde are off with Grandma tonight, and Georgie is downstairs right now and seems to be okay, so I'm hoping I can get this recorded before I have to feed her in a few minutes here. But for a couple weeks here I've been meaning to do another book vlog to kind of talk about the books that I've been reading so far in 2018. I was hoping to do this at the end of every month, but it just hasn't happened in the last couple of weeks, so I just figured I'll stick it in where I can. But so far I've read about 8 books, and I'm probably going to finish another couple in the next week or so. But I wanted to give a quick rundown of the ones I've read so far, just for fun, just as an update. So if you didn't see on my blog, I'm doing a couple of reading challenges this year, so some of these are to fit into my reading challenges, and I'm hoping that I can squeeze them into some of my categories, because I'd like to try to finish the reading challenges. I don't know if I will, but I'm going to try. So here we go. Got my coffee, and I'm just going to put the pictures of the books up on the screen as I mentioned them, because I do not have most of them. They were either digital or from the library. So first couple books I read for the year was, one was Why I Didn't Rebel, and I didn't write down her whole name here. It was Rebecca Gregoire something, and I can't remember, so I'm not going to guess. But it was all right. It was an okay book. The premise of it was that she's a millennial who didn't rebel, and why didn't she rebel? She wants to tell parents why she didn't rebel, I guess. I'm also a millennial who didn't rebel. I'm probably on the older half of the millennials, and she's on the younger half. So it was interesting to kind of see the differences in what I thought and what she thought. A lot of the things I would agree with. Some of them I felt like once she becomes a mom, she may adjust her opinion on certain things, but it was still an interesting read. I enjoyed it overall. But I wouldn't read it for like parenting advice necessarily, because she is only 22 and she doesn't have kids yet or anything. The next one I read was Hello Mornings by Kat Lee, and I thought it was a good book. It gave a lot of good suggestions for how to develop a good morning routine and stuff. I had a couple bones to pick with it. I felt like the gospel was really not explained well at all, and that's just always disappointing to me in Christian fiction. I feel like if you're gonna write a Christian nonfiction, if you're gonna write a Christian nonfiction book, I feel like you should present the gospel somehow, and it would have been really easy for her to do that with the way she began the book, but I felt like it was incomplete, and that kind of bothered me because I felt kind of like it gave an impression, an incomplete impression of like what it means to be saved. So I couldn't like give it full stars because of that. The next one I read was Love at First Sight by Josh Sundquist or something like that. I'm probably saying his name wrong. And it was an interesting book because it's like a YA book, and there's, you know, a couple things I wish weren't in it, but the premise was really interesting on this one because it was about a boy who was blind, and he went to a blind school for all of his growing up here. So he's entering high school, or maybe he's a junior or senior in high school now, but he wants to be in a public school, wants to be out in the real world. So he gets enrolled in this public school, kind of makes some friends, and then finds out that he could possibly get a surgery done that would give him his sight. So he gets it done, and that's not really a spoiler because it's kind of the premise of the book, but it was just really interesting the way it was explained on how that would work if someone who is blind at birth were to get their sight, and how things wouldn't necessarily make sense to them right away because they didn't have any like frame of reference for what things really looked like. So that was really interesting, and I thought, like, reading it at the end, I was just thinking, like, how much more of a miracle was that Jesus healed that man that was born blind, because not only did he heal his eyes, he had to heal like his brain and give him the connections in his brain so that he would be able to like know what he was seeing. So I thought that was really interesting. All right, the next one I read was Murder on the Links by Agatha Christie. Since the movie came out, hopefully that didn't mess it up. Since the movie came out, last fall, Murder on the Orient Express, which I thought they did a great job with the movie. I was interested to reread it because I kind of forgot how that movie and slash book ended. I read it like a lot of years ago, and I didn't remember that he kind of, all right, this is a spoiler, so you might want to skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want to know the ending, but I kind of forgot that he let all of them go, like, and that he kind of like lied for them and didn't like give them, like, hand them over to the police once he figured out who was the murderer. So I kind of wanted to read it because I heard someone else mention that later, that kind of comes back to play like later in the Hercule Poirot series, and he kind of regrets that decision of letting the murderer go. So it made me really interested actually to read all the books again, because I wanted to see how that does play in later, because it was mentioned to me that it does. So I'm kind of trying to reread some of them. But Murder on the Links was not my favorite Agatha Christie. So if you're just haven't read any of hers and you're interested, I wouldn't necessarily recommend starting with that one. I felt like it's a little bit more confusing than some of her mysteries and a little more, just not as much of a page turner. I actually really like Hercule Poirot's Christmas. I read that one at the end of this last year, and I think that would be a good one to start with if you want to start in the middle of the series. All right, and then I read I See You by Clare Mackintosh on a recommendation from a blog friend, and it was good. I liked it. It was pretty clean for a secular suspense book. I had to give up on a lot of secular books because I just will only tolerate so much language or so much, you know, other junk that's in a book. So this one was clean. I got through it, and I didn't feel like yucky afterward, if that makes sense. But it was really, it really kind of grabbed my attention and made me turn the pages. She wrote another book that the same blog friend told me I should read, so I am going to read it. And I'm a little nervous about that one, but I'll give you an update once I get to that one. Then I just finished When We Were Worthy by Marybeth, Mayhew, Whalen. And I don't know what I thought about that book. It was kind of like a small town drama kind of book, which seemed like it might be interesting, and I read it, but it was just a little, I don't know. Like, I thought it ended all right, and it didn't have too much bad content in it, some bad language and a couple other things I would have left out, but I don't know. It just didn't make me feel good. I don't know. It wasn't my favorite. It was okay. It kept me interested, but it wasn't my favorite. Let's see, what else? Oh, Castle of Water. I already mentioned this one on Instagram, so if you follow me there, you probably already know what I think of it, but it was really good. Like, there was a lot of bad language in it, and particularly using Jesus' name in vain, which I do not like, and I do not condone at all, and almost made me want to quit on it a few times because I felt like that was kind of the cuss word of choice, and I hated that. But I stuck it out, and the writing in this book is just really good, so that was kind of made me want to know what was happening next, because it was written in a suspenseful way, but also just really like good language use. It was really good. And the story is basically two people stranded on a desert island and kind of their journey to eventually hopefully get off. And just a heads up, it is not exactly a happy ending. It's not like a completely depressing ending, but I wouldn't call it like a super happy ending, which I usually would not like, but in this book it just worked for me. I actually really enjoyed it. There's also a couple paragraphs in the middle with some situations that, you know, could probably be skipped. Like, there was like one paragraph that I kind of like skipped over because I just didn't want to get stuff in my head, but the storyline was just really good and I liked it a lot, so I would recommend checking that out, but just know that I don't like love everything in the book. Just a couple things I wouldn't have liked to read necessarily, but the rest of it was really good. I feel like I'm really dragging this video out. I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit. And then I got all those. The last one I just finished like last week was The Discipline of Spiritual Discernment by Tim Challies. And this was a really good book. I definitely would highly recommend it. I thought he was just really thorough on covering everything that Christians mean when they mention discernment. So talking about discerning God's will, but then also discerning between like right and wrong. And he covered like both aspects of that really well. And he said a lot of things that really made me think. And I'm trying to remember. I thought I heard Georgie. I think we're okay for a minute. But there was a lot in it that I just found like convicting, and it was really good reminders for me. And yeah, it was just really good. I feel like every Christian should read this, because it's like I've been thinking lately about the spiritual gifts a lot, and it's one of those things where I think sometimes we focus on whatever gift we think we have and try to develop that, but then we need to remember that just because you have one gift, you're not necessarily supposed to neglect the others, because all the spiritual gifts are kind of based on things that we're supposed to be doing as Christians anyway. So discernment is one of those things, and it's like, even if it doesn't necessarily come natural to you, it's something that like Christians should be growing in. And I thought this book would be really helpful for kind of figuring out how that would look. So I definitely recommend that one. Oh, Georgie's coughing. Let's wrap this up. Okay, I'm back. Georgie is down to bed now. So I just wanted to close this up real quick by showing you a couple of the books that I'm reading now that I'm kind of excited about. So first I just had to mention this one. This is probably going to show up backwards on the video, which is going to be really annoying if it does that. But I read this to Clarice tonight before I put her to bed, and it's Bear Sees Colors, and it was really cute. I don't know if you've read the Bear books, but they're really cute. And I liked this one because most color books that I've read are really boring and not fun to read at all. But this one actually was really cute. It had like a little story to go with it, and different pages to teach the colors, but they weren't like boring for me, so that was really nice. So this one was fun. And then I just got this one from the library, which I'm kind of excited to read. It's The Lost Art of Reading Nature's Signs. So it's like, you know, seeing which way the trees are bending and identifying animal tracks and I don't know, a bunch of other stuff that I don't know yet because I haven't read the book. So I'm excited to read it and kind of see what he's talking about. It looks fun. We'll see. I'll update you if I can get this in before the next video that I try to do here. And then finally, I picked this one up, My Cousin Rachel, which you might remember I brought on vacation with me last year but never got to, and it's just been sitting on my shelf. So I think I might try to count this as a classic that I've been meaning to read. I'm pretty sure that's one of the categories on my reading challenges. And it's really good so far. I'm like 7 chapters in, and it's really got my attention, and it's just really good. So I will update once I finish this. And that's all I've got for tonight. So I think I have a little girl sneaking out of her room when she's supposed to be sleeping, so I'm gonna go tuck her back in. And I guess that's it. Bye. Oh, I almost forgot. If you want to know any detailed content breakdown for some of the fiction books I mentioned, please follow me on Goodreads, because I do try to be a little bit more thorough in my Goodreads reviews about content concerns, because I don't know about you, but when I'm reading a secular book, I kind of like to know what I'm getting into so I don't run into things that I really would rather not read. So I try to be thorough and kind of give you an idea of what to expect with any books. So if you were wondering more about some of the ones I mentioned, then go ahead and check it out on Goodreads. All right, bye.